the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest, parenting expert, psychologist, and mom of four, none other than Dr. Lindsay Emmerson.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks so much for having me here.
Welcome back to one of my podcasts, Dr. Lindsay. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I know?
Sure thing. So, I am on a mission to reframe parenting as a learned skill and to empower parents with practical psychology backed strategies to parent with confidence.
That'd be awesome. I have a new podcast upcoming, Dr. Lindsay, Positive Parenting 101. I hope you will be my regular guest over there and let's empower parent all over the world through your knowledge and wisdom. And again, thank you so much for sharing your expertise to the world.
Oh, well, thank you, Daniel. That sounds like a great podcast. I can't wait to have it come out.
Yes, please do come over. So let's talk about it's too late, how to reset your parenting approach. So in this episode, let's secure attachment. Explicitly notes that it's not too late to form strong bonds with children. Is it?
Absolutely not. And it doesn't matter whether you're a parent of a 1 year old, a 5 year old, a 14-year old, it's not too late. And you can certainly even say the same about an adult who is still your child. But what I tend to work with is parents of kids age 0 to 18. And it is amazing when they come to me when they're pregnant or when their child's in their first few months. And you can really get them early on and start teaching them about authoritative parenting early on. But I have parents who come to work with me at all ages. And initially, they may be reluctant. They may think, well, I don't know, is it too late? Have I missed out on my chance? Are these habits too ingrained? Is this behavior just too out of control? And the answer is no. Resoundingly, you can still make a huge impact on your child's development and on your parent child interaction, regardless of what age you start using authoritative parenting strategies. And what I know we've talked about this in the past on your other shows, Daniel, but for your listeners, authoritative parenting is one of four different types of parenting styles that have been identified consistently in psychology research across cultures, across socioeconomic levels, all different kinds of kids. These four different styles emerge when you look at parents across the board and how they interact with their kids. And so there's the authoritarian style, the strict because I said so, follow the rules because obedience is key, not a lot of warmth in that relationship, typically very cold and just very rule oriented. That's authoritarian. At the opposite end of the extreme is permissive parenting. And permissive parents are very easygoing. They want to focus on warmth and the relationship, but they have very limited boundaries, not a lot of structure. The kids can stay up as late as they want, have screens whenever they want, very few rules. So those are the two extremes. And then there's another style that is less common, that's neglectful, where the parents just are really uninvolved. So you don't see that as often. But what we see is these two extremes, the authoritarian and the permissive. And you can think about stereotypical sitcom parents often fall into one of these extremes. And often when I talk to parents, they think back to their child and they say, oh, yeah, my parent was very authoritarian, or no, my parent really just let anything go. And so they were very permissive. So we have these two extremes. And then what's the one that actually works? Because these don't work very well. These don't lead to great outcomes for kids. But there is one style that actually works, and it's the middle ground. And the term that's used to describe it is not my favorite term. It's kind of confusing. It's called authoritative parenting. I usually just replace that term in my parent coaching and call it amazing parenting. So amazing parenting is this middle ground that psychology research consistently shows leads to the best outcomes for kids. Things like great relationships with their parents, higher academic success, better social relationships, less mental health issues, all the things we want for our kids. And this comes from balancing warmth and structure. And when you bring both to that relationship, you can make a huge change in your child and your relationship with them at any age.
At any age. So speaking of the amazing parenting, you often about moving from a good amazing, as I said, parenting. For a parent who's just surviving right now, the idea of amazing might feel like a cruel joke. How do you bridge that gap between survival mode and thriving?
Yeah, so that's a great point, Daniel. And so, what I always try to clarify is amazing parenting is not perfect parenting. None of us are perfect. None of us are going to be doing the right thing all the time in every situation. And that would just be exhausting. And it would set up unrealistic expectations for our kids, right? So, for many reasons, we're not shooting for perfect parenting. So, amazing is a very positive word, it's a very aspirational word. But really, the main reason I started using this term is simply because authoritative parenting is just a rough term. It's so similar to authoritarian, which is what we're trying to avoid. And so we needed some new term. And so this concept of amazing is the kind of parent that you want to be, but you may not get there every day. And that is just fine. Showing yourself grace is a really important part of being an amazing parent. And the psychology research shows that you do not need to be 100% on all the time. There's this concept called good enough parenting that the research shows really roughly 50% of the time. If you show up in your best way and you find that perfect balance between warmth and structure, about 50% of the time, then you're doing great. And your kids are going to get all the wonderful outcomes associated with amazing parenting. And so once I teach parents about this idea of good enough parenting, it just takes the edge off. You say, okay, well, I know what I want to be like, but I also know I don't have to be that all the time.
Yes, definitely. So you emphasize transforming core psychologically or psychology principles into actionable tips. What's actually happening in a parent's brain when they get stuck in a cycles of yelling, frustration, and guilt? And how does understanding that helps them break free, Dr. Lindsay?
Yeah, so there are a lot of concepts that we use in our day to day interactions with other people that sometimes we haven't perfected. And then when we bring them to kids, and kids add this whole nother element of stress and irrational thinking and emotionality, that then these concepts become even more challenging. So let's say with an adult, you are pretty good at keeping your cool, right? You're not losing your cool too often. Somebody would have to really offend you for you to lose your cool. But you take that down to your kids, and your kids saying just outrageous things and doing outrageous things and breaking things and all the jazz that comes with being a parent. It can be very hard to keep our cool in that situation, even if we pride ourselves upon being very level headed and rational people in regular day to day life when interacting with other rational adults. But when we interact with these irrational kids, everything changes. And so, one of the first steps in becoming an amazing parent is just learning what's going on in our children's brains, because kids are not little adults. And so I often call upon the work of Jean Piaget, who's a prominent cognitive psychologist who taught us that kids didn't have the same way of thinking as adults. And this was really a new concept in like the 1930s, 40s. It was really a wild idea to think that kids didn't have the same level of thought as adults. Now it's much more commonly known. People will frequently cite the age of 25 as when your average person's brain is more or less fully developed in terms of having the frontal lobe on board, which is helpful for more logical, rational thinking, emotional control, all of these things that govern social interactions. So now it's very common for people to know, okay, that's not going to happen until much later. But if you approach your parenting with this understanding, when your child's having a meltdown, instead of saying, oh my gosh, they have terrible behavior, why are they doing this to me? Don't they know I have so much going on today? And instead you say, oh, it's because they're 3. And this feels like a big emotion to them, and they don't know how to manage their big emotions. That helps you to go in with so much more empathy, so much more patience, and to know, hey, I've got to use a different strategy with this person than I would with an adult who has a logical brain. So it just helps you to go in with the mindset and to have a much better outcome in terms of promoting better behavior in your child.
Beautifully articulated. Dr. Lindsay, you referenced the concept of secure attachment as a foundational. If a parent feels their mess the early years, maybe they were less present or less regulated themselves. Can that attachment to be repaired? What does repair work actually look like?
Hmm. I'm glad you brought that up because attachment is such an important part of any child's development. So, the concept of attachment goes back to Bowlby and Ainsworth and their really seminal work showing that there is this natural bond between parent and child. And the child has needs, and the parent is responsive to those needs. So it starts out with things like feeding and keeping you safe and bathing you, and it moves on as they get older to comforting you when you're upset and providing you with the resources you need. So there's this relationship, and it's reciprocal. The parent gets a lot out of the relationship too. And when you find that parent and child are well attuned, they're well matched, and so the baby's needs are met with the parent's responsiveness, and this is done in a warm way, you develop what's called a secure attachment bond. And that is really solidified in babies by age 9 months, sorry, by age 9 months. So you really see this attachment bond by 9 months, even stronger going on in the first few years. The first 3 years of life are critical for developing secure attachment. And this is when parents want to consistently show up in a warm and responsive way for their children. Now, that's ideal. Not every child is born into that home, right? Not every parent can be there and show up in the way that their child needs. And sometimes the primary attachment figure becomes a different parent or somebody outside of the home. It might become grandma who lives down the road, or it might become auntie. I was just speaking with a grandparent who is now taking care full time of her grandkids. So that replaces the parental attachment bond. You now have a primary attachment figure in the grandparent. And the research is beautiful here. It doesn't have to be a parent, but you have to have at least one person who you have a very strong attachment bond with to see those great benefits in adulthood. And so to have that sense of security, that resilience, all of the positive outcomes that we see from kids with a secure attachment bond, you just have to have one primary attachment figure. And so ideally, it's the parent that you're born in, the household you're born into. But even if that shifts throughout life, you can still support a child by showing them that warmth, that responsiveness, that consistency, and set them up for a lifetime of success.
Again, again, beautifully articulated. Dr. Lindsay, you teach a 5 C's parenting framework without giving away the whole system. Can you share what those 5 pillars are and what they matter for a parent trying to hit the reset button?
Yes, absolutely. So when I started working with parents, I knew that they needed some sort of organizational structure, right? If you just watch tips on Instagram and you try to remember them and then I can't remember, I got to pull up some saved reel, it's hard to actually implement that in your parenting. But if you have a system that can help you to, in those stressful parenting moments, recall, hey, what am I supposed to be focusing on here? That's what can really lead to meaningful change. So I developed the 5 C's parenting framework to really clearly identify the 5 areas where you can actively and intentionally put effort in your parenting and see meaningful change in terms of your child's behavior and your relationship with your child. So, just quickly, they are communication, the way that you communicate with your child, the actual words you're saying, the tone, the systems that you set up in your family around communication. So, communication, consistency. And so part of this is that warm and responsive interaction style. Part of it is things like having consistent bedtime routines, having consistent eating schedules that help to maintain more stable mood and promote better behavior. Choices and checkpoints. So the checkpoints here are those developmental milestones, understanding the different way that your child's brain thinks at different ages, and then corresponding with that, what kind of choices am I going to give them at different ages so that they can have a sense of autonomy and help feel like they have some sort of control, and it helps them to be more compliant on the things that you do have to hold a hard line on if they have more say in the things that really don't matter that much, like what vegetable to eat at dinner or what color shirt to wear. So we've got communication, consistency, choices and checkpoints, consequences. Now, this is not harsh punishment, but consequences are a teaching tool, and they're a way to help kids learn from their behavior. Consequences help to either promote or make less likely the same behavior in the future. And then check yourself. And the overarching idea here is getting intentional about your parenting and really thinking through, how is what I'm bringing to this interaction affecting what's happening, and how can I change what I'm doing to guide this in a better direction?
Mm, a better direction. Indeed, you've obtained three-step process for intentional parenting. Define your philosophy, set family goals, and build practical toolkit. Walk us through that, and how does a parent even begin to define their philosophy when they are in the trenches of a daily chaos?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you say that. So often parents will come to me when they're in a little bit of a crisis. They feel like, oh, my child's just behavior is off the chart right now. We need a fix. And so we don't talk about parenting philosophies until much further down the road. We jump right in with communication. First, you need a strategy just to get communication better in your household today, so that when you ask your child to do something, they're actually doing it and you're not constantly frustrated. Or when you have expectations for your child, that they actually know what those are and it's not some sort of blind expectation. So there are strategies that we start working on immediately to see small shifts. And over time, it's not usually till we get to the fifth C, to check yourself, that we even sit back and say, okay, now that things are going a little more smoothly, let's kind of get this meta way of thinking here about your parenting. And how would you describe your parenting philosophy? And so I always share mine as a guide, and people are welcome to adopt it, but they also often kind of tweak it and come up with their own. But my just overarching parenting philosophy is love, balance, and problem solving. So the love part, you've got to have that unconditional positive regard for your child, that they are worthy, they are good, they are capable, regardless of what they do. So kids are learning. It's part of their main role in life to make mistakes, right? And so if we
Yes.
were to criticize them for every misbehavior and judge them for that, that really hurts their sense of identity, their sense of self. But if we go in there and separate the behavior from the child, the child is good, the child's on a great path. This behavior we need to tweak. We need to work a little on that. If we separate those and we just always let the child know that they're loved, that's a great foundation. So we got love, we've got balance. So that's this concept of, I have a child at this age right now. So I have a 5-year-old, let's say, and I know one day they're going to be an 18-year-old, and I need to make sure that I guide them to where they need to be at 18. So I have to balance just having fun and being 5 with them actually learning everything they need to know by 18. So I do have to spend part of every day guiding them towards better behavior. So it's not high stress, it's not something you constantly think about, but kind of in the back of your head is just, are we on the right trajectory? That's the balance part. And then the problem solving part is that I truly believe any parenting challenge you encounter is overcomable. It's surmountable, right? Nothing is so hard that it needs to crush us as parents. We can problem solve. And I teach a formal problem solving strategy that helps parents to work through different options and come up with the best option. And so for me, that's kind of my guiding parenting philosophy: love, balance, and problem solving. And that's the overarching framework. Within that, the 5 C's show you where to focus your efforts. And then within each of the 5 C's, there are specific strategies that help help you with various things that help promote better behavior. Everything, I mean, it can be as simple. I talk a lot about developing a family mantra, or using, I have a signature 3-2 thank you strategy that falls under the consequences category, so that you can overcome parent child standoffs in an effective way. So all these little strategies are down here at the base, but it's love, balance, and problem solving that's the umbrella for all of it.
Dr. Lindsay, you created a content parent of babies 0 to 9 months, all the way through teens. How does the reset conversation change depending on a child's age? Is it harder to reset with teenager or than a toddler?
Hmm. Every kid's going to be a little bit different, but the things that you want to focus on when they're younger are a little more natural, right? If you're kind of a warm, kind person, it comes more naturally to you to focus on attachment, right? To be responsive to them, to hold them, to soothe them. Those things tend to come fairly naturally, and that's really all you need to focus on in those first 9 months. And then it starts to get a little more tricky when you get into the 1 to 5 years, because you still want to be doing that. You still want to be showing the warmth and all that unconditional positive regard. But you also have to shift into the role of being the loving authority figure in the relationship. And that, for a lot of people, is when it gets tricky. And that's the key part of amazing parenting. It's finding that balance between warmth and boundaries. And this age 1 to 5 is where you really want to bring in those boundaries, but it doesn't always come naturally to people. So that's when I find people have more questions, and they say, okay, I know I should just put on their shoes if they won't put them on themselves, but how do I do that? They're upset. And so all of these just small micro moments of parenting, but they add up, and they help to teach your child, when I say this is important, we need to follow through on it. And if it's not important, you can have autonomy, you can do your thing. But it helps to teach your child to respect your words and to see you as the loving authority figure. So it's different than just the loving figure that you focus on in that first year. So start to see that in 1 to 5. And then more outside influences start to come in. When you get more into the 6 to 11 phase, there are more friends, there's school. And so you start to help your child to develop the skills that they need to internalize: coping skills, problem solving skills, a growth mindset. And so you start to focus on all of these really key factors in that 6 to 11 range. And then once they're getting into the preteen, teen years, that's when you need to step back and really check yourself and make sure that you are enabling them to succeed through guidance and not through doing it all for them. Making sure that they're getting to the independent point that they need to be at 18. Now, people sometimes get offended when I talk about making sure your child's equipped to be independent at 18. Doesn't mean they have to move out. It's perfectly fine if they want to stay at home, but they shouldn't be staying at home because they have to, because they're not ready to launch, because they're not capable and feel capable of living independently. If they want to make a smart choice and save some money and live in your basement, that is totally fine. But if they do not have the confidence in themselves or the skills to live independently by 18, that means that the prior years weren't spent guiding them towards finding that destination.
Yes, definitely guide them, people, to be a better person, to be a better citizen of the world. You offer downloadable resources, a podcast, a masterclass as a membership community. For a parent who's overwhelmed and doesn't know where to start, what is the single best entry point into your work?
Yeah, I have a really great, quick and easy freebie that will teach you 5 fundamental parenting strategies. And you can get that at drlindsayemmerson.com/better. And so that's a great place to start. And then follow up with my newsletter and social content, and we can go from there.
Certainly. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, Dr. Lindsay, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in sixth season, abstract poetry in third season, and of course, my book 101 review in sixth season too, comedy 101 in fourth season, and of course, my food 101 in sixth season as well, geography 101, love letters, a movie 101 review, music 101 are for fifth season, science 101, sex 101 are in fourth season, and my baby podcast, Review 101, Motivation 101, Spiritual Awakening 101, Entrepreneurship 101, Law 101, Mental Health 101, Coaching 101, as well as my Bible Verses 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Lindsay, or Dr. Lindsay, if you could sit across from a parent who is listening right now, convince they mess up their kids beyond repair, and it's not too late to change. What would you want them to hear, not as a psychologist, but as a mom who's been in their trenches herself?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think I would have to just share with them that we've all been there. We've all had moments when we feel like this is not working. What I'm doing with my child is not working. And I feel like they're a good kid. It's not the behavior that I want to see. How am I going to change this? It is possible. There are so many strategies that you can use that can break through to different kinds of kids. And this is a season that will pass. The years are long. That's not right. The days are long. The days are long, but the years are short. There we go.
Certainly. So, Dr. Lizzie, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or whatever projects that you want to promote on Abstract Essay?
Oh, yes. Thanks, Daniel. I would love to share with your listeners that I have an amazing Parents Club membership where you can come weekly and ask me your specific questions. It's a great resource, and you can find it at drlindsayemmerson.com/club. I also have a podcast, the Parenting with Psychology podcast, where you can start getting free weekly psychology-backed parenting strategies.
That'd be awesome, Dr. Lindsay. Yes, people, let's support Dr. Lindsay Emerson, because if you support her, for sure, more and more empowering parenting will rise. So, Dr. Lindsay, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
Modicum people, see you soon. And looking forward